around their former home and remember who they really are.
Hello church, it's so good to see you, even though we can't see you. We hope you're all doing well. We're just going to tell you a few things that are happening in these weeks.
Yes, so although we have to socially distance and we can't see each other face to face, which is really sad, we can still connect loads online, which is incredible. So there are loads of Zoom calls happening, from life groups through to every age and stage of youth, and kids are also keeping in touch that way. And we're also running loads of fun socials so that we can continue to have some positive experiences during these challenging days. So we have things like Zumba on Saturday mornings, we have quizzes going on Saturday nights, after work drinks from Monday to Friday. You don't have to be working those, so you can come along anyway. And we're doing prayer meetings as well, 3 times a day, to be praying for the people of our world during these challenging times, and especially some frontline professionals as well, and praying for that and for God to have his way right now.
So good. Today in the evening we have an evening service. To sign up to that, you should have got an email via Church Suite. If you haven't got the email via Church Suite, you can email admin@freedomcenteruk.com and get access there. We also have Josh Datiri preaching next week, which is something to put in your diary and make sure and be expectant for that, because that's going to be a good Sunday.
Yeah, we're excited for that. So other things that have been going on in the life of church, we've continued to bless people in the community, and this week we gave a delivery of visors to medical professionals at the RUH. They were really grateful, and it's amazing to have different people with different skills in our church who can help bless the community. So that was an amazing part of our way to bless people this week.
Amazing. Prayer and praise. If you have anything that you need us to pray for, you can go to freedomcenteruk.com, and at the bottom of each page it says pray and praise, and we'll just put all your details in. You don't have to put your name, but you can just put what you want us to pray for, and in the week there'll be people praying for you. And also put praise reports, because we love to hear what God's done in your life, especially in this season. Yeah, I think it's now time for the offering.
Thanks, Jonah. So the offering is a time in our service where we continue to worship God by bringing our tithes and our offerings. Just like we worship him during singing, we know that it's so important to praise God for how good he is. And he is persuasive, and this season is no different. He is so consistent. And I just wanted to share a couple of Bible verses that have really helped give me peace during this time, and it's just something that I'm so grateful for. So I wanted to share it. It's from Psalm 91, which is a passage that we've been looking at a lot as a church. And I'll just read a couple of verses from verse 1. It says, "Whoever dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, he is my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. Surely he will save you from the fowler's snare and from deadly pestilence. He will cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you will find refuge. His faithfulness will be your shield and your rampart." And these words, they just bring so much hope to me right now, so much peace to me right now. And this is why we build church, because our God is a God of peace and a God of hope and a God of love. And we love to give in this time because we want more people to know this. We want more people to find his peace. And we all know that a lot of people could do with a lot of hope and a lot of peace. So God again says in Malachi 3, "I am the Lord and I do not change." And he asks us to bring our tithes and our offerings to his house so that there is enough food for all the people. So that is why we're giving, because we want there to be enough food for all the people, and for people who need peace and hope right now. So the details of how you can give will be coming up on the screen right now. If it's too quick and you miss it, you can go to our website anytime during the week, www.freedomcenteruk.com, and you can give via that way as well.
still and trust what the Lord has said is done. Find rest, don't strive. Watch His faith and grace alive. I won't be afraid. You are here. worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are He, touching every heart. I worship you. I worship you. You are He, healing every heart. I worship you. I worship you. You are He, turning lives around. I worship you. I worship you. You are He, mending every heart. I worship you. I worship you. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. Oh, you are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. Oh, that is who you are. That is who you are. That is who you are. Oh, that is who you are. 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 Oh, you are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop, you never stop working. You never stop, you never stop working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop, you never stop working. You never stop, you never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop, you never stop working. You never stop, you never stop working.
Hi there. I hope you enjoyed our new music worship format. We're so excited about having it that way. We're just going to pray now for the kids before Kids Club. So wherever you are, kiddies, whatever you're doing, let's just pray for you right now, because we're so grateful that we have hundreds of kids at Freedom Centre UK. I think they're fantastic. Miss all of your faces. Miss you all dancing at the front. Miss all you running around. Let's pray. Jesus, thank you for every single one of our kids. Thank you, Jesus, that you love every one of them. And God, we ask right now that you would protect them, that Jesus, you would strengthen them emotionally, that you would strengthen them physically, that Jesus, you would be their protector. God, thank you for every one of them and their uniquenesses. Amen. Amen. Okay, church, I'm going to now bring a message which I've been asked to do, to talk a little bit about this current situation, what the impact is going to be or is already on us as humans, and what the Bible might say about that. So there you go. That's what I've been asked to talk about by a couple of people, and I'm going to give that one a go this morning. Okay, are you ready? So first of all, I just want to have a little look at what kind of things, what kind of words we could use to describe what's going on at the moment. And of course, I write lots about trauma. I'm a trauma psychotherapist, so I can't help but think that the three key words that really we need to be exploring at the moment are the three words that really define trauma. And the three words that define trauma are, number one, terror. Number two, powerlessness. Number three is overwhelm. Now, I'm not going to spend a long time looking at this, and if you want to know more, I've written stuff and got stuff out there. But I just want to briefly look at what the impact is of our current situation with lockdown and global chaos, really, and just think a little bit about those three words. You see, really, we are in a global crisis, and that's just factual, I think, that everybody would agree with. Whether we all become traumatized as a result of it is dependent on a whole bunch of different factors. You see, a crisis doesn't need to be a trauma. High levels of stress don't need to be trauma. Trauma is defined by experiences where we're terrified, we're powerless, but also we're overwhelmed. And I believe there's a whole bunch of key principles that I can hopefully bring out of some Bible stories today to help explore how we can stop going into a state of overwhelm. So I hope that's going to be helpful for you. I want to start by having a little look at a Bible story in Numbers. In Numbers chapter 13, and it's best remembered by a song that usually I just can't help but sing old songs that I grew up with. And usually there's a few people in church that would join in. But I'm not going to do it right now because that would just be awful online and I'd feel stupid. But essentially it's the 12 men who went to spy in the land of Canaan to see what they could see. You see, you can hear the rhyming there. Let me read it to you. Okay, so Numbers 13. Right, so Moses, the Lord spoke to Moses saying, "Send out for yourself men so that they may spy out the land of Canaan, which I'm going to give to the sons of Israel." And then it talks about how to do that. And so he sent them to spy out the land. And there's all sorts of very specifics about what they're going to be looking for and who it's going to be. And then it says, the spies returned from their spying out of the land. They returned from spying out the land at the end of 40 days. They proceeded to come to Moses and Aaron and to all the congregations of the sons of Israel. That's a lot of people. They didn't have microphones, so I don't know how that worked. In the wilderness of Paran at Kadesh, and they brought back word to them and to all the congregation and showed them the fruit of the land. Because they came back, I missed that bit. They came out with a branch with a single cluster of grapes, and they carried it on a pole between two men and some of the pomegranates and the figs. So they had show and tell. They showed all these thousands of people their show and tell of grapes and figs and pomegranates. And then they told them, "We went into the land where you sent us, and it certainly does flow with milk and honey. And here's the fruit. Nevertheless, the people who live in the land are strong, and the cities are fortified and very large. And moreover, we saw the descendants of Anak there. Amalek is living in the land of Negev, and the Hittites and the Jebusites and the Amorites are living in the hill country, and the Canaanites are living by the sea and by the side of the Jordan." Then Caleb quietened the people before Moses. Caleb had a different perspective. He said, yeah, but we should all, by all means, go up and take possession of it, for we shall surely overcome it. But the men who'd gone up and with him, they said, we're not going to go up against the people. They're far too strong for us. So, hang on. They gave out to spread scary rumors among the people of Israel. They said, we scouted the land from one end to the next, and it's a land that swallows people. Oh, swallows people whole. Everyone we saw was huge. Why, we even saw these giants, and we felt like grasshoppers. You see, here we can see 12 different people that have the same experience of spying out a land and seeing all these pomegranates and figs and grapes and incredible luxuries that they wouldn't have had in the wilderness. But at the same time, they saw giants, they saw terrifying things. And all 12 of them, we recognize, would have felt a degree of terror at these giants and these terrifying people that they saw, that they knew that they would have to defeat to get the land. So we recognize terror is right there in the midst of the story. The second thing we can see is powerlessness. What we're reading from the other guys who don't have names here in this chapter, we recognize that they're expressing their powerlessness. They say in that verse there, which is verse 33, we became like grasshoppers in our own sight. And so, therefore, we were in their sight. I mean, how clear is that of the nature sometimes of powerlessness? Without diverting too much, we recognize that trauma impacts young brains way more than it does older brains. And we need to always remember that when a brain is developing at a high speed, which 0 to 5 is the critical time. And then, of course, all the way up to around 20-ish, 20-something, where the prefrontal cortex forms a lot more. And, of course, the brain remains being very malleable and it has a high level of plasticity, so there's a lot of change that can happen. It's harder work to change when we're older. So when children experience terror, powerlessness, and overwhelm when they're little, it has much more of an impact on them than when we as adults experience the same experience. And we need to remember that all the time, because I often come across families that go, well, we all went through it and I'm all right. It's like, no. Children's brains soak up experiences and have different perceptions. Our brain is so complicated. We as humans are so complicated that obviously all of us have had a similar experience to an extent, but all of us have had very, very different experiences according to so many different factors about our personality, our background, our trauma history, our current situation, whether we're frontline workers in hospital or whether we're running around trying to deliver all the post that needs to be done. There's so many different contexts for every single one of us that we can't ever talk in blanket terms about, well, we're all in this together. We are, but we're kind of not. We're all in very different contexts together. Okay, same with these guys. The 12 men went to spy in the land. They all had the same experience of seeing fruit, seeing great things, but 10 of them came back going, we felt like grasshoppers. We felt so small that they could crush us in a second. They used words like they could swallow us up whole. They're very dramatic, very visual, very descriptive language explaining that they felt powerless. To be a grasshopper, I mean, I haven't seen one recently. I remember growing up as a kid, and we used to go grasshopper catching on our holidays and try and catch them, which I'm not sure if that's mean and cruel, but it was quite fun. One of the few things my brother and I would do together for hours on end, which I'm sure pleased my parents too. But, they're really small. They leap pretty high, but they're very small. So for these guys to say we were grasshoppers in our own sight, we felt so diminished. We felt so powerless. We felt so terrified. We felt so useless. We felt so overwhelmed that we might as well have just been like a grasshopper. We're just going to be trodden in seconds. There's no way we could go and defeat and overcome this situation. Their perception was based on their understanding of the situation. But Caleb and Joshua had exactly the same situations, and they did not see themselves as grasshoppers, so nor did they project that onto the people of Canaan and assume that they saw them as grasshoppers. They didn't think of grasshoppers. That wasn't an image that they spoke about. What we actually hear them very clearly saying, Caleb says, in this one, he says, we should by all means go up and take possession of it, for we will surely overcome it. He doesn't even say, well, there's a chance we might overcome, there's a chance we won't. He really does have in one hand such strong faith that God can do everything. And in the other hand, he's not denying the reality. He doesn't stand up after the news report from the other 10 guys who say, but there's so many giants, it looks terrifying, we're overwhelmed. He didn't go, no, there were no giants. I don't think it's going to be difficult. He doesn't say that. He says, by all means, we're going to surely overcome. Why? Because he has faith in God. And that's just a little example of different perception. Now, let me just add some little bits around why we can have such a different perception of different experiences. And, very often we like to think that we make cognitive decisions that we're fully in control of. And, we're going to think through what we're going to do and how we're going to react, and we're just going to do those. It's not how it works. About 90% of our decisions are actually formed in the subconscious. We are reacting to different situations according to what's in our subconscious. And our subconscious is all the different experiences that we've had in life that primarily are not processed. You see, if they're processed, they become conscious. If we've recently, witnessed a car accident, and then we come back and we talk to our flatmates or our family or a therapist or a friend or somebody, if we talk about it, if we draw about it, if it comes into conversation regularly, which in our current culture people think, well, haven't you already said that once? Yes, it's called processing. People need to repeat it in order to process it. That's healthy. It's seen as dysfunctional by people that don't understand how we as humans are created to be. It's a functional process to process externally experiences. Because then they're no longer in the subconscious, they're in the conscious. If they're in the conscious, they're in the cognitive. If they're in the cognitive, it means that we actually have the ability to be rational and think through how we want to react in many situations. What we see in this story is 10 guys were reactive. They were reacting to probably different experiences that they've had in their past that have left them feeling insecure, left them feeling powerless and terrified that they didn't process. So that kind of latent fear of being terrified and powerless and slightly overwhelmed anyway, they go into a challenging situation and that's triggered. Straight away they're like, we're gonna be eaten whole. Because Joshua and Caleb went, no, I think we can do it. I think we can beat them. I think we're going to be okay. Perception. It's so much to do with our subconscious. Let me explain a little bit about how the brain is working right now for all of us, because I think the more we're aware of it, the more we're moving it from our subconscious into our cognitive. We're moving it into the realm of knowledge. We're moving it into the realm of what we know. When we know something about ourselves, then actually we're able to have more insight. We're able to have more reflections and responses rather than reactions. Reactions are that immediate. Well, we couldn't stop to think. We just reacted. And being able to respond is the ability to go, if I go and do that, the likelihood is I might have a reaction. So what can I do first? And so what we know is that when we feel overwhelmed, when we feel frightened, when we feel powerless, different things shift in our brain. There's different neural activity. There's different energy levels in different areas of our brain. So what we recognize is that actually these 12 men, when they went into the land of Canaan to go and spy out the land, they would have been in a place of vigilance. They would have been looking, seeking for cues of danger, seeking for cues of safety. And they were looking for it. They were looking for the fruit. They didn't just stumble upon it. They were proactively looking for it. They were seeking after it. But they were also seeking to find out how dangerous it was so they could probably, I presume, make some strategies for defeating the people there. So that means that what's happening is this part of our brain, which is reflective and reasonable and rational and able to be cognitive and thinking and analytical, as they began the journey, they were probably exercising a lot of neural activity in the front part of their brain. They were really thinking it through, and probably as soon as they saw their first giant or they saw their first terrifying sight, probably what happened is the vast majority, and we don't know if it was all 12 or 10, immediately went into a place where this cognitive part of our brain probably went slightly offline as the amygdala, the fear center, and the brainstem, the primitive part of our brain, took over in order to keep them alive. And that's how we're designed. We're designed to be able to withstand phenomenal threat because we go into an automatic mode, and that automatic mode enables us to function in the face of extraordinary threat. The problem with automatic mode is our automatic mode is led primarily by our subconscious. So if we've spent time getting to know ourselves and reflecting and being self-aware, then we'll be less surprised by our reactions. If, however, we've been a brain on legs and we've spent the whole time being very cognitive and reasonable and rational, and we haven't paid attention to our subconscious because we think, that's just for girls, that's just for wusses, that's for people that, have spare time. I'm not going to pay attention to that. I'm perfectly self-reliant. Then what happens is we have reactions that surprise us. And this leads to all sorts of relational breakdowns. It leads to all sorts of insecurity that people go, I'm not insecure, but they don't know it's lurking there because they haven't spent the time. I often have a phrase I love to pull out, and it's called this: self-awareness is the key to integrity. As followers of Jesus, this church exists to disciple people in how to follow Jesus, right from people that have never thought about Jesus from anything other than a swear word, all the way through to people that maybe have grown up in families where Jesus was a word and a name used all the time as the person that we give our worth to. But the purpose is to try and follow him more. And in following him more, we want to be people of integrity. Well, integrity is about integration. And integration is about the ability to integrate our cognitive along with our subconscious, along with our spirit, that we're one, so that actually we're able to function in the face of overwhelming terror, overwhelming powerlessness, overwhelming intimidation from a place where there's a sense of integrity and integration of who we are. I love that phrase. I get excited about integrity. I get excited about people as characters showing that actually no matter what happens, there's a sense of strength within us. And that strength comes from, like Caleb and Joshua, our faith in God, that even when we don't understand what's going on around us, even when we're confused, even when we're holding on to the promises of God and we don't see them fulfilled, we still have this faith that withstands storms. It withstands devastation because we know that we're trusting in a God who understands way more than we do. He's the Alpha, the Omega, the beginning and the end. So in one hand we have faith. In the other hand, I would argue that we have to have self-awareness. Self-awareness of our stuff. Self-awareness of our own personality. Because then we're more aware of what situations are going to trigger us. What situations are going to actually put us into place where our subconscious stresses that we've experienced before are just going to come back up and react in ways that might be unhelpful. None of us are perfect. None of us are in a place where we're completely, we're finished products. We're all in the process and the journey of life. And as we journey through life, we want to become more like Jesus. Why? Because it says in the Bible that that's the best thing to do. And we believe as we become more like Jesus, we actually become more who we were created to be. And so recognizing what situations can cause our prefrontal cortex to go offline because the rest of our brain is taken up with this sense of overwhelming need to survive is giving us a little bit of a heads up. So I guess if I was to think about the 12 spies, I probably, would have liked to have said, look, I'm a psychotherapist, let me help you. When you go in there, you're going to experience threat. When you experience threat, you're going to have a bunch of different reactions. And those reactions mean that you might do things that surprise you. You might be more emotionally reactive. You might actually exaggerate some of the experiences you're having and use metaphors to describe them that actually aren't accurate from other people's perception. But they demonstrate the level of emotional pain and turmoil within them. You might use words like, oh, they're going to swallow me up whole. We feel like a grasshopper in their sight. And then I'd say to them, look, there's some things you can do to get this part of your brain back online so you can be reflective, so that you can be a little bit more rational, so you can see things with clearer perception. So you're not tripped over by these obstacles that would stop you potentially being able to go and conquer the land that you believe is your promised land. So I'd say there's things like breathing. It sounds so simple, but actually, God gives us breath. I was reading only yesterday in Ezekiel 37, and as Ezekiel's told to prophesy, there's a beautiful verse, and it says God gives you breath, and he gives us our breath. And when we're breathing, when we're mindful of our breath, when we're mindful of our body, when we're able to breathe, we're able to think better. We're able to be more rational. We're able to be less reactive. We're able to be more thoughtful and able to analyze and see clearer. There's a whole bunch of other techniques and tips that maybe I'll get to, maybe I won't, I'm not sure. But I just wanted to first of all explain that when we're under threat, different parts of our brain have different extra neural activity, and that can lead us to behaving in ways that can surprise even us. So right now, because we recognize that there's a lot of our children and young people are feeling powerless. They can't get out. They can't do what they used to do. Their routine and rhythm of life has been robbed from them. We know that some of them feel terrified, but some of them just feel frightened because they don't understand why this has gone, why they've got this loss happening in their life. And some of them feel overwhelmed because they haven't yet worked out how to process and express that. Of course, for young children, play is the critical way. Of course, for older children, it's all about creative arts. And for all ages, it's about sensory stuff and writing and creative and play. And exercise for older kids. That's in a nutshell, in a very small way, how we can process and make sense of it and become healthier. But fundamentally, we recognize that most of our children are feeling powerless and a little bit terrified and probably overwhelmed. Many of you out there might be feeling, yeah, that's me. I feel terrified and powerless and overwhelmed. Well, I want to just unpack a little bit of what that looks like, because it will be normal, therefore, to be emotionally reactive. I often use the example that actually if you stub your toe on holiday, you tend to go, well, stupid door. I don't want to stub my toe. Ow. But then you carry on. Nothing's going to hinder your holiday fun. But if you stub your toe on a bad day, who knows what that's like? You end up like, the final straw. I can't believe I stubbed my toe. I hate this door. I hate this house. This is just awful. We're more emotionally reactive because we feel more overwhelmed. And that's normal. Right now, most people will be more emotionally reactive. The deal about these guys going in to spy the land is it's very similar to us right now. Most of us are in our houses. For some of you, you're not. You're out there and you're still working really, really hard. And some of you on the front line. What we're having to do is we're having to make our brain go into a state of hypervigilance. We're having to be vigilant about washing our hands. We're having to think, if a delivery comes to our house, do we spray it? Do we wash it? Are we okay? And then did I wash my hands afterwards? And did it go on my clothes? And we're having to train our brain to not relax. We're training our brain to be vigilant. And the parts of our brain that are used in vigilance are all of our brain. But actually what happens is we end up moving into very primitive states where we're scanning in a subconscious way, what could harm me? The biggest danger, I would argue, at the moment is that we're trying to train our brains to look at other humans as potential threats. Well, that's going to have all sorts of impact when we are able to see each other on more relaxed basis, because we're actively training our brains to look and see somebody and go, threat. Whereas before, our natural instinct is, I'm under threat, I need to huddle with people. Can you see that that's the opposite of what's normal? It's counterintuitive. It's counter what our instinct is, which is to go towards people when we feel scared. Instead, we're being told we have to pull away from people into isolation because people are a threat. Well, the deal is, when we can say that, when we can talk about it, when we can voice it, when we can reflect on it, when we can go, wow, no wonder my brain feels overwhelmed. No wonder I feel tireder than usual. No wonder I feel slightly overwhelmed all the time, or maybe a little bit dizzy, or maybe you're needing to rest more, or maybe you're feeling just more overwhelmed. Maybe you're more emotionally reactive. Maybe your kids are more aggressive in their behavior. Maybe they're more fighty and angsty. Maybe they're more demanding. Maybe there's more separation anxiety. There's so many different possible behaviors that are basically that our brains are being trained to do something that doesn't feel normal and is counter what we do usually when we feel unsafe. So much to say. But that's roughly what's going on a little bit with our brain. Let me carry on and explain something else that's quite critical. So I'm going to leave the story of Caleb and Joshua, but it's really one to go look at and see how easy it is to have different perceptions of a same event according to our background. And hopefully, I do not read that Caleb and Joshua at any point went, well, you've got issues. You 10 people, you need therapy, you've got problems. Although actually therapy is never for people with issues, it's for all of us. That's not my point. But my point is, they weren't condescending, they weren't judgmental. I don't read anything in the story where they're like, man, I think we're perfectly able of overcoming. You've got perception issues. And actually, we need to be really aware right from now that all of us will have different perceptions of different things, and we need to not be judgmental. We need to be gracious and kind, and to acknowledge that all of us have stuff in our subconscious which dictates how we react to things. And whilst it's our responsibility to bite the bullet and go for it and really learn about our subconscious, because that leads us to integrity, which leads us to be less reactive. It leads us to be stronger in the storms. We also recognize that actually we're just humans. And one of the quickest things that we can actually learn to do is put our roots down like a tree in a storm into the soil of God's love, into the soil of his faithfulness, into the soil of his integrity, into the soil of his steadfastness. He never changes. No matter what, he doesn't change. He's always good, and he's always kind, and he's always for you, and he's fighting for you, and he knows you. And I think that's one of the biggest things that we can do when our brain might be trying to adapt and it's playing tricks on us, and our subconscious is making us feeling a bit overwhelmed, because different feelings of powerlessness and terror and overwhelm remind us subconsciously of different experiences in the past. When we have our roots firmly down into no matter what, I mean, Job says, even when there's no sheep in the pen, even when everything's gone wrong, still I will trust in you. And when we've got that as our faith, even people that aren't anything to do with following Jesus, even people that disagree with religion or Christianity, colleagues of mine would absolutely, without doubt, say one of the biggest resilient factors for surviving difficulties is having a faith. I've had lots of people email and text me and go, I wish I had your faith. And I'd love to help them have it, and maybe they can watch this, and maybe you can learn some stuff about how to have a faith in an invisible God who I believe is there. And just to answer that one quickly, if you're in that place right now, why don't you pray? Why don't you go, God, if you're there, give me a sign, and just watch and wait. Be expectant, like a treasure hunt. Don't just sit there with your arms crossed going, Have a look, be expectant, see what God might say. Okay, I want to go on to another point. And the next point is all about social connection. You see, this is a little bit more about self-awareness being the key to integrity. Social isolation. There's another continuum. I love continuums. I have a lot of continuums out. And there's a continuum which is more to do with our personality type, but also our background, our trauma experience and background. And the continuum looks a little bit like this. On one end here, we've got, and Sarah's very kindly doing an image for me, which I will have up on different forums as soon as I possibly can. On one end, we've got overwhelm of too many people. I'm sure we've all been there. We're peopled out is sometimes a term. And on this end, we're peopled out. On the other end, we feel abandoned, rejected, lonely, and desolate. Somewhere in the middle, we feel really, really just good. We feel really socially engaged. We feel really, vibrant and alive, loved and known. The thing about this is that we need to know ourselves. We need to know ourselves and what actually causes us to sit in the middle. What things do we need to do in our life in order to sit in the middle? And what causes us to be peopled out? And then what do we need to do? And what causes us to feel rejected, abandoned, and desolate? And what kind of things, what do we feel in our body at that point? And what do we need to do to move along the continuum back into healthy and socially engaged? And what is it that causes us to be so peopled out that we want to hide? And what do we need to do to bring ourselves back into socially engaged and feeling alive and healthy? Let me read to you something from Matthew 14. This is of Jesus. It says, immediately Jesus made the disciples get out of the boat and go on ahead of him to the other side while he dismissed the crowds. After he'd sent them away, he went up on the mountaintop by himself to pray. And when evening came, he was there alone. This is actually the story of Jesus losing his mate Lazarus. He's in a place of grief. And he's recognizing that he has lost a friend. And what he does is he gets into the boat. He goes on to the other side. He dismisses the crowds. He goes to the mountain by himself. And when evening came, he was still there alone. You see, Jesus recognized that though he was God, he was also human. He recognized what his needs were. He was in a place where he was teaching hundreds of thousands of people, but then he needed to retreat and be on his own to process loss. He needed to process some stuff. He needed to be all alone. Maybe he was in a place that I have no idea of being peopled out. Maybe he was like, oh my goodness, everyone has got so many questions. Everyone's got so much to ask. He wasn't then reactive and went, bah! Instead, he pulled himself all the way back by going, I need to be on my own. Maybe he did some breathing. He certainly did praying. It says he prayed. And what we know about prayer is it's another way that God created us to process life by just talking it out before God. It's not an empty room. It's not an empty wall. We're talking it before a God who hears us. And how do we know that? Because we see answers to prayer all the time. So we know that God is hearing. He doesn't always do what we want him to because he's God and we're man or woman. But he does listen and he cares. And the Bible tells us all the stories of how much he cares for us. My question is this. What is it that causes you on the furthest end of the continuum, not just to feel lonely, but to go into despair, to feel abandoned, to feel overwhelmed? Can you be reflective on that so that actually you can pull yourself back before you go too far down on the continuum, because the further to both ends you go, the harder it is to come back. But what is it that causes you to actually feel like you can be socially engaged again and you feel healthy and you feel alive and you feel good about life? What is it that makes you feel so burnt out with people that actually you feel like you need to retreat? Jesus models for us all the time that he disappeared on his own to pray. Sometimes he took a couple of mates with him. He models for us healthy emotional regulation. He models for us the ability to say, I need to do this now. As it happens, straight after that in Matthew 14, you can read that then, suddenly a crowd comes before him and he feels compassion. It actually says he felt compassion on them and went and healed them. So he didn't even spend that long alone. And he was then moved by compassion. You see, there's a theory I have, and the theory I often talk about is the bucket theory. And I've mentioned it in church before, and I mention it in all my different worlds. And the bucket theory basically says, I like to picture we have two buckets inside of us. One is our shiny bucket, one is our muddy bucket. In the shiny bucket, we collect happy memories. We collect those lovely moments where we feel socially engaged, we feel alive, we feel loved, we feel known, we feel regulated, we feel healthy. And hopefully you out there have got stuff in your bucket. It's a great activity for you this week if you have got some time to think about those memories. You might feel you don't need them now, but they're a good thing to have if you go into a place of overwhelm, a collage, a diary, a journal of happy memories, happy times where you felt so known and loved and alive and healthy. That's your golden bucket. We also have a muddy bucket. In our muddy bucket, we collect up all the things that actually are a bit too overwhelming to deal with in the moment. They're just a bit too much. And, if you're just about to go and meet a friend and, I don't know, something awful, someone swears at you or somebody, I don't know, some does something in the car and you feel awful, you're probably likely to put it straight in your muddy bucket, stick the lid on it and carry on and meet your friend. It might not be till later, maybe late at night, maybe in the middle of the night, maybe you dream about it, or maybe the next time you're back in the car, you suddenly remember that feeling and feel, ooh, that wasn't nice. And that's our muddy bucket. It has the capacity to hold within it horrible experiences that we just don't have the capacity to deal with now. So we have to put them in and deal with them later. The thing is, if we don't make time, like Jesus modeled for us, to go alone, to go and process, to go and make sense, or sometimes to go and verbally process with others, if we don't make that time, our buckets get full. If our buckets get full, actually we tend to, I describe it usually as we leak. And we leak by our behavior leaking. We just become a little bit more grumpy. Some of us right now who are juggling working at home at the same time as helping our children through schoolwork or preschool or all of that stuff where you feel like you can't breathe and there's no break and it's relentless, especially if they're not sleeping at night, your buckets are going to be full right now. And so if you have a partner listening right now and maybe their buckets are less full, the kindest thing you can do for the person with the full bucket is go, do you need 20 minutes? Do you need an hour? Can I look after them? Can I do this for you just so you can go and do what Jesus did in Matthew 14 and go and be alone? Go and breathe. Go and sigh. Go and cry. Go and journal. Go and paint. Go and sing. Go and dance. Go and run. Do something that externalizes so that your bucket becomes less full. Jesus modeled for us this incredible ability in Matthew 14 to understand what his needs were. And I believe that he's modeling that. There's nothing in the Bible that's there, that's just there by mistake. It's there to show us how to live. And so I suggest all of you, all of us, let's think about the continuum, the social engagement continuum. What sends you into overwhelm on either end? What is it that sends you into overwhelm and what could be done? I know for many of you go, well, that's the problem. I'm powerless. I can't do anything. And now you've made me even more angry, Betsy, because I'm so powerless. Well, good, get it out. It's better to get it out than to sit there steaming so steam comes out of your ear. It's okay to say it. Many of you are powerless. Many of us are powerless. But let's state it. Let's have the emotion validated. Let's acknowledge it so that then when we recognize that actually that's freaked us out and we felt so constrained and so trapped, actually we can develop empathy for others who around the world are living constantly in a trapped, overwhelmed place where they can't get out, where they're powerless. May this experience drive us to such empathy for those people that we will never forget how awful it is to feel this powerless. But meanwhile, let's be empathetic to each other. Let's be there for each other's tears, for each other's crossness. Let's not try and fix it. Let's listen, let's validate, let's care, and let's show practical care in this time. I need to move on. I've totally forgotten how long I've been, but I need to move on anyway and just talk a little bit more here about powerlessness, I think. I want to just mention briefly about powerlessness. We've looked a little bit at terror. Have we? I think we have a little bit. When we feel terrified, we have all these reactions. And actually, when we can calm ourselves down and breathe, then we can regulate our emotions better. And we can teach our kids to do this too, so that our prefrontal cortex can come back online. We feel less terrified. We just feel appropriately anxious or nervous or frightened. And then we can act in a way that we want to act in. That's a little bit about terror. I've looked a little bit at overwhelm. I want to look at powerlessness. Powerlessness, for now, I'm just going to give you the task. Why don't you go and start thinking about it? Again, what's your response when you feel trapped? What's your response when you're not in control? What's your response when you can't be in control of how you're looked at on Zoom, of how people might perceive you if you cry on a Zoom meeting? What's your response to the powerlessness of your emotions right now? What is your response? What's happening for you? Be curious. Be compassionate to yourself. Don't be angry with yourself. Don't judge yourself. Let it come out in a curiosity about who you are and what you've experienced in your life, that God would enable. Jesus is the light of the world. He wants to shine lightness into the crevices of our heart and our subconscious to reveal stuff about ourselves so that he can bring us into freedom. His desire for us is to bring life to us, to breathe life into us, to bring us into a place of authentic freedom, not fake, cheap freedom. Yeah, I'm happy. No, authentic freedom. When we've processed stuff, we've come out the other end and our body is able to go, I'm okay. Our spirit is able to go, I'm an overcomer. We've been able to go on journeys where we haven't been simple and clear-cut about things. We've matured through the journey of life, through our roots going down into the soil of faith, at the same time as we hold ambivalent emotions, at the same time as we're processing and we're regulating our emotions. There's so many other tools and tips that I'd love to share with you later, but I hope that's been a little bit helpful. The impact on our brain, overwhelm, powerlessness, and terror. They're causing our brain to rewire in different ways for this season. But when we're aware of it, we can go slowly back into a different way of living when this is over. Slowly, slowly. But when we're not aware of it, we might feel confused and we might feel even more overwhelmed. And then we're just feeling like we're just going from one thing to the other, and we're even more powerless and even more confused and in the middle of a storm. When we understand this kind of stuff, it can give us a sense of anchor in all the seasons of life. So God bless you. I hope that helps. Let me just pray for you right now. Jesus, I ask right now that every person that's been watching, that every person will have a sense of your presence. God, I thank you. You say in the Psalms that you taste and see that the Lord is good. God, I ask for those people that are wondering whether you're good, or whether maybe they're in a situation where they've lost a loved one. Maybe they're in a situation where their whole life feels like it's fallen apart. God, I ask that they would have courage to reach out to you and to taste and see that you are good. You are not the creator of bad stuff. You are a good God who wants good things for us. Jesus, I ask that those people that are shut down will have a sense of life breathed back into them. God, I ask for those people that are feeling just like they're twizzling around in a storm where they're responding and reacting to different news articles and different instructions and different things, and their brains are overwhelmed and they can't reflect and they can't meditate. God, I ask that you would be the peace that passes all understanding, that they would know that you never leave or forsake them, and that you're always good. Jesus, will you draw close to every person here? Thank you, Jesus, that we can have roots in our faith deep down into you. Amen. Amen. We're going to have a little moment of worship right now. And then we'd love to meet you on Zoom if you want to Zoom with us, and we'd love to get to know you more. God bless you. Have a brilliant week. Whatever's happening for you, we're praying.
Hold me now in the hands that created the heavens. Find me now where your grace runs as deep as your scars. to fear. You pulled me from the clay. You set me on a rock, called me by your name, and made my heart whole again. So here I stand, high in surrender. I need you now. Hold my heart now and forever. My soul cries out. Once I was broken, you love my whole heart through. Sin has no hold on me, 'cause your grace holds me now. And that grace owns the ground where the grave did, where all my shame remains, left for dead in your wake. You crashed those age-old gates. You left no stone unturned. You stepped out of that grave, shouldering me all the way. So here I stand, high in surrender. I need you now. Hold my heart now and forever. My soul cries out. Once I was broken, you love my whole heart through. Sin has no hold on me, 'cause your grace holds that ground. Healed and forgiven. Look where my chains